Во тема на денот денеска разговарам со Волвганг Петрич, австриски дипломат и човекот со чие посредство Австрија стана земја членка на Европската унија. Mr. Petrich, you are in Macedonia in a sensitive political period. The government begins the process of changing the constitution, but without the support of the opposition. What is your impression so far?
Well, first of all, I have to say that I'm very impressed and actually admire your country because it has done such courageous steps in the past in order to become part of the European Union. I think it already started when the conflict between Macedonian Albanians and Macedonian Slavs, when this conflict was on the brink of a war, you were able to come back from this brink. The same with Greece, you managed this in a very courageous and very impressive way. I think this is really the indication that you are a truly European country. Now it needs one neighbor, Bulgaria, as we know, to really stop this kind of unfair play for you to join the European Union, because I believe bilateral issues everywhere in the European Union, I can tell you from Austria, have to be resolved bilaterally. You cannot put this on the table in Brussels as a problem. That's the first rule in the European integration process. And so I sincerely hope that that Bulgaria will understand that Skopje does everything in order to go one step towards Sofia, towards Bulgaria, and the change of a constitution is always extremely difficult, and I would appeal to every citizen in this country, to appeal to every member of parliament to really take this decision seriously and support these necessary changes. This is a stumbling block on the road to the European Union, which needs to be overcome.
Yes, public opinion surveys show a decrease in support for the European Union, and that more than 70% of Macedonian citizens are against changing the constitution. Can the government allow such a process against the will of the citizens?
Well, this clearly is the art of politics, to try and convince, to argue in favor, to explain why this is necessary, and even if it's very difficult. Yeah, I mean, the constitution clearly is part of a state, an integral part of any country, and is very difficult to change in any of the countries in all of Europe. So therefore, I understand the difficulties, but I hope that with the support of everybody who has a good will, who cares for the future of North Macedonia, we say we do this because we will soon then afterwards be able to fully move towards joining the European Union.
Why citizens are losing the support for the European Union? Can we blame Brussels given the numerous conditions over the past years?
Well, I mean, I would not want to go into this blame game and say, you know, Skopje is to blame, or Brussels is to blame, or another European Union member state is to blame. Yes, of course, we all made our mistakes. Maybe we thought differently. Sometimes we are very egotistical. But you need to keep in mind the European Union has 27 members. And each and every member in the European Union is very independent and can block or can stop any development. Yeah? So therefore, Brussels has to be extremely careful. Yeah? And sometimes Brussels would like to do much more, but it cannot, because the European Union is dependent on its member states. This will then also, of course, be the situation once North Macedonia has joined. It will also have a big voice in Brussels to speak, hopefully in a positive and constructive way, but not all the governments in the European Union are so constructive. And therefore, this is in a way the difficulty for the EU Commission in Brussels to move in a more rational way. They have to be more careful, it is slow, it goes one step forward, two steps back. That is unfortunately what we need to count into this very complex situation.
Yes, but in your rich diplomatic career, do you remember another country with such conditions for starting negotiations?
No. I must say this is really a first and a unique situation. Yeah? I mean, it was difficult already in Cyprus, where actually originally Brussels did not want to accept a divided country, but then the Greeks said we want Cyprus to be part, even when it's divided, and it happened. So sometimes Brussels has to give in to one single member state. Yeah? This is a similar situation now with Bulgaria, undoubtedly, but I think that this will be overcome, and you need to think in terms of changing the constitution and making arrangements also in the longer term. You know, in the short term it's difficult, definitely, but in the longer term it will produce many positive effects for your country, for your own identity, for your own economy, for your own culture. You know, this is, and you will definitely contribute to this very interesting European differences that exist, but the differences in cultural terms need to be seen in a positive way, yeah, and not in a negative. And your language will become part of the official chorus of European languages in Brussels. All the documents, or you can speak there in your own language and so on. So this is something where you will realize actually that your identity is actually best preserved in the European Union.
Are there any guarantees that this will be the last condition?
The last, I hope so. Yeah, I mean, you never know what other ideas, maybe crazy ideas, will come up. But I don't think so. I'm quite confident because I know that in Brussels and in most of the capitals in the European Union, the sympathy is on the side of Macedonia, definitely.
Should Macedonia be satisfied with such a negotiation framework in which one member state can stop the whole process at any time?
I think in the future this will change. Unfortunately, right now it still applies, but the reform of the European Union is the next big important step. Yeah? When the Western Balkans countries are going to join, we will need a new structure for decision making in Brussels, definitely. Yeah? Which will mean that individual member states will not be able to stop progress. Yeah? This is necessary because the European Union now, against the backdrop of a terrible war of Russia against a neighboring country, a Slavic country, by the way, and neighboring, these are brothers in many ways. They speak the same language, but we know this, of course, also from the destruction of Yugoslavia. You know, where basically the same languages were spoken, one could talk to each other, and nevertheless the war broke out. Yeah? So, I mean, there's always this danger here, but the European Union sees itself as a project for peace and understanding, of compromise and cooperation.
What is your advice to the government and the opposition?
Well, I think the government needs to reach out. I know it's difficult. Also in my own country, government and opposition are always against each other. This is the normal democratic process. But then I believe the opposition has to realize now is a historic moment for our country. Yeah? And then I have to go beyond only being an opposition. This is, I believe, what the opposition will need to consider, and I think the people, the voters, the citizens will be afterwards quite happy that a political system like in your country was able to work together on this very one thing which is so crucial for the future of North Macedonia.
In your career, you were a special envoy for Kosovo and Bosnia. How do you assess the situation today?
Well, Kosovo, I think things are moving there. There have been agreements in February and now in March. The Ohrid was again a very important place, not just for your own history, but now also for the history of Kosovo and Serbia. So I think progress is being made. Just the other day I spoke with Mr. Lajčák, the special envoy for Kosovo, for the dialogue. And he sounded quite optimistic. They do have the next meeting on beginning of May 2nd. They are working now in this technical team. So I think after a long period of stagnation, you see now that things are moving. And I tell you, that's very important because the normalization of relations is very important. But even more important is that by normalizing the relations, you're also preparing for more investment, for a better economy, and for a better life for the people, be they Serbs or Albanians in Kosovo. For both communities, life will be better once a normalization is reached.
Mr. Petric, thank you for this interview.
Thank you.